Hola, Lily. I'm very glad to see you here today.
Hola, buenos días.
Buenos dias. Well, really quick, Lily, I would like to conduct our first chat in English so that the students in first and second level can understand everything that's been said. No? And the idea for this short interview video is to encourage the students to be aware that Spanish is, that they can overcome whatever problems they think they have with the language. And Spanish is a great idea for a major, minor, no? And you can tell us about that. My first question would be, did you start your first semester in languages in Spanish, knowing that you were going to be majoring in this language? And then how did you become aware of that?
So I didn't. I actually started as a biology major. Like I've told you in the past, in high school, I really disliked my Spanish classes. I didn't have teachers who were very passionate about getting their students passionate about the language. So it was more something we just checked off boxes for rather than became in love with. And then biology requires you to take Spanish 101 and 102. So when I got into 101, Senora Escobar recommended that I take the placement exam,
Mhm.
and I tested out of 6 hours. And then that's when we started talking about me doing a double degree or a double major, because I was interested in a career in medicine. And that is obviously something really helpful for doctors right now.
Yes, well, I'm glad that you brought up um, your encounter and the help that you received from Dr. Escobar. Um, what can you tell us about the professors around here in the department?
The professors are so helpful. I cannot say that enough. It's very interesting to see the differences between the two departments. I am currently in the process for applying to grad school, and they have been sending me letters of recommendation, editing any kind of papers or writing samples that I have to give. They're really good about responding to emails in a quick manner. So it makes the transition from being a student to being a graduate level student, and working in the professional world much easier than I expected that it would be.
Yes, well, one thing I'd like to say is that I think all departments in the university, we all care for students in every department. But for some reason, I would like to think that in a way here in world languages and cultures, we'd like to, because we're a small, kind of a small department, we'd like to think of ourselves as a family. That's why we are always trying to know what's going on with your interests, with your job seeking, and all of those things. No, that's why maybe it's why you found that part where we are so encouraging, you know. And I like the idea that you realize that, and I hope the students listening to us can also be motivated and approach us. You know, well, you mentioned that this is something for me that I personally that I enjoyed so much learning about. The fact that you being you started to learn the language, you know, but then you all of a sudden you realize now that you're about to graduate that you would like to continue on further in your studies in graduate school. So what can you tell those students that they cannot foresee their future, but many of them have that they are able to go ahead and pursue and go on to even graduate studies. You know, are
Yeah.
you comfortable with that? How did you find that? How did you find out about that?
So whenever I started in the double major, I was placed into my first upper level class. It was advanced Spanish conversation. And being from a household where we have no native speakers, this was my first taste of a true Spanish only environment. And I would go home and I would cry every day because I felt like I had made such a mistake becoming a double major. It was so hard, and I barely understood anything anyone said to me. But then after a couple classes, it's really hard to describe, but there was like this transition between not understanding and then picking up a couple little pieces. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, did they even say that in Spanish or English? I couldn't remember because I was able to understand the whole thing. So
Wow.
whenever I got closer to finishing at Southeastern, like I said, I'm looking to do a career in medicine and I've worked in the medical field for 2 years. I realize how I'm not satisfied with the skills that I have now. And not in a sense that I'm lacking, but in a sense that I want to continue growing. I want to continue being able to express myself even further in the language and especially in a medical environment. So I decided to apply to some graduate schools to look at getting my certification to be an interpreter. You do not have to go to graduate school to become an interpreter, but in a sense of medical terminology and not being a native speaker, for the interest of the patient, it's better that I receive more education and become more versed in the terminology in Spanish,
Right.
not just in English.
Well, there are many students that will probably not think of becoming Spanish teachers or moving on to, to a more specific field in languages, in Spanish, for example. But what can you tell us about any other profession and the idea of being bilingual?
Sure. So personally, I work in an emergency room. That's where I've worked for the last 2 years. And when I was doing my senior capstone project, this is what I talked about the most was the lack of Spanish speaking nurses, doctors, teachers, any kind of profession. You don't have to go into a role as an interpreter or just as a Spanish teacher because being bilingual is such a gift. And in a country founded on immigration, we have a lot of Americans and visitors that struggle with their English because, from a Spanish perspective, it's very hard to learn a second language. When I learned Spanish, that was tough. And so, in the healthcare field, it's actually a human rights issue that there are not enough healthcare providers who can speak this language because there are people who come to the United States and they're mistranslated and they're misdiagnosed or they're not even offered an interpreter. And so, as a nurse or as a doctor or a tech, which is what I do right now, you actually can receive higher pay because of your skills, but then you're also able to advocate for these people and ensure that they're getting the same level of health care, even if it looks differently than somebody who would come in who would be not a normal patient, I would say just a traditional patient as to what you'd expect.
Now, of course, you have gone through all of the experiences of first semester, second, and so on. Now, how could you help out the students in guiding them? Who do they need to approach if they want to change or ask maybe what's going on with a minor in Spanish, a major in Spanish, a double major? What would be your suggestion for them? Who do they need to talk to?
Sure. I think, first of all, talking to whatever Spanish teacher of the class that you're in, if they're your students, I think you're a very easy person to talk to. You respond to emails pretty quickly. Dr. Harrison is the department head. She's wonderful. You can email her, she'll email you back in about 10 minutes. And just to get some more information, for me as a biology major, I was very concerned with having to extend my time in college because I'm on scholarship and I can't afford to pay for extra semesters. But they really worked with me about fitting in both majors at the same time, and I'll graduate with 2 degrees in 4 years. So that was really helpful, and ensured that I could continue with the plans that I had for myself from the beginning of college, even though the path may have changed to get there.
Yes, very good. Now, a final word from you. What would you tell the students to encourage them and ask questions? Be not afraid of the language, of the culture. What would you tell them?
I think the biggest thing is that you have to get over the fear of looking dumb. That was my thing that I really struggled with. And I kind of shied away from native speakers because I thought that they would think that I was stupid if I messed up in the language. But my skills have grown so much more being confident in myself and taking advice and critique from other native speakers. And they're so appreciative that you're talking in the language and learning about their culture. They don't care if you stumble on a word or mess up a conjugation. And I think that's how you'll really grow in your skills, whether you're a minor or you're just taking 101 and 102.
Lily, I had just a student in the upper level classes, and I still remember how concerned you were with your assignments, with your participation, and you have been an example for many students to follow. And I hope the students listening to us can hear you, and if they see you around, they can stop by and ask you a question. And I'm very glad that you have shared this moment with all of us, your experiences. Muchas gracias, Lily, por toda tu ayuda. Hasta luego. Chao.
Adios.